Meet Elena. She's a doctor, 12 years of medical school and residency behind her, an IQ that intimidates people at dinner parties, and a bookshelf full of finance books she's actually read cover to cover. She can explain compound interest, diversification, and tax loss harvesting without blinking, and she has almost no savings to show for any of it. This doesn't make sense on paper. Elena understands the math better than most financial advisors. She knows exactly what she should be doing, and yet, every few months, the same pattern repeats. An unnecessary purchase, an emotional splurge, a decision she could have predicted and warned a patient against if it had been anyone else's money instead of her own. Here's what almost nobody tells people. Intelligence and financial behavior come from two different systems inside the brain. One handles logic, analysis, and long-term planning. The other handles emotion, urgency, and immediate reward. Money decisions get made by whichever system is loudest in that specific moment, and intelligence doesn't automatically make the emotional system quieter. The first force working against Elena is cognitive load. Her job as a doctor demands enormous mental energy every single day. Diagnoses, decisions, split-second judgment calls that affect real lives. By the time she gets home, her logical brain isn't operating at full capacity anymore. It's exhausted, and exhausted brains default to whatever feels easiest in the moment. This is called decision fatigue, and it doesn't care how smart someone is. After hundreds of high-stakes choices during the day, the brain runs low on the exact resource needed to make one more careful choice at the mall or online at 10 at night. The smartest decision Elena makes all day might be her last one. The dumbest one is often whichever comes right after. The second force is emotional reasoning, the brain's habit of treating a strong feeling as if it were solid evidence. Elena doesn't think, I deserve this because I earned it logically. She feels exhausted, stressed, or overwhelmed, and that feeling gets quietly translated into a justification that sounds completely rational after the fact. Here's the twist nobody expects. Intelligence doesn't prevent this pattern. It often makes it worse. Smart people are exceptionally good at constructing convincing arguments, even for decisions that were never actually made logically. Elena can build a genuinely persuasive case for almost any purchase, because building persuasive cases is a skill she's spent years mastering. Psychologists sometimes describe this as the brain acting like a lawyer instead of a judge. The decision has already been made emotionally. The logical brain's real job in that moment isn't to evaluate the decision fairly. It's to defend a verdict that's already been reached. And smart people simply make more compelling lawyers. The third force is present bias, the brain's tendency to overvalue immediate rewards and undervalue future consequences, even when the math clearly says otherwise. Elena knows intellectually that skipping the purchase and investing the money instead is the better long-term choice. In the moment, long-term feels abstract. The sale ending tonight feels real. This is why simply knowing about present bias doesn't cure it. Elena has read entire chapters on this exact phenomenon. Understanding a bias intellectually and neutralizing it emotionally are two completely different achievements, and most financial education stops at the first one, assuming knowledge alone will be enough. The fourth force is identity spending. Elena isn't just buying an object, she's buying a version of herself, the successful doctor who's earned nice things, who doesn't have to think twice about a purchase. The item matters less than the identity it temporarily confirms. This is particularly powerful for high achievers because their entire identity is often built around competence and success. Spending becomes a small, private confirmation of that identity, especially after a hard day where competence felt harder to access than usual. The purchase isn't really about the object. It's about temporarily feeling like herself again. The fifth force is analysis paralysis backlash. Elena spends her entire workday making careful, evidence-based decisions under pressure. By evening, her brain sometimes rebels against more careful analysis, craving something simple, immediate, and decision-free. Impulse buying, ironically, can feel like relief from being smart all day. The sixth force might be the most dangerous one, overconfidence bias. Elena's intelligence has served her well in almost every area of life, which quietly builds a belief that she'll naturally be good at money too, without needing the same deliberate practice she applied to medicine. Competence in one area doesn't transfer to another automatically, but it often feels like it should. This creates what we'll call the expertise trap. The assumption that being smart in one domain means financial mistakes simply won't happen to someone like that. This overconfidence can actually make smart people less likely to build the same safeguards, budgets, and checks that someone who feels genuinely uncertain about money might build for themselves. Put together, these six forces explain something that used to feel like a personal failure to Elena. It was never about intelligence. It was about six invisible systems running in the background of every financial decision. Systems that intelligence simply doesn't override on its own, no matter how sophisticated the thinking looks on the surface. This matters because millions of genuinely intelligent people have quietly given up trying to fix their finances, assuming something is uniquely wrong with them specifically. It isn't. The system explaining Elena's pattern is largely universal. It simply gets triggered more often in people whose daily lives already demand enormous mental energy elsewhere. So if intelligence alone doesn't fix this, what actually does? The answer isn't becoming smarter. Elena is already plenty smart. The answer is building specific structures that work even when the logical brain is too tired to fight the emotional one. Structures designed around human limitation, not around willpower. Step 1 is a redesigned version of the 24-hour rule. Not wait a day and think about it, because Elena's brain is excellent at generating convincing justifications given extra time. Instead, the rule becomes automatic. Any non-essential purchase over a set amount gets moved into a saved cart, untouched, for 24 hours, with no active reconsideration allowed. This small design change matters enormously. It removes Elena's lawyer brain from the equation entirely during the waiting period. There's nothing to argue for or against because no active decision is happening. The decision simply gets automatically delayed without requiring willpower to delay it. Step 2 is decision budgeting, treating daily decision-making capacity like a limited resource because it is one. Elena starts scheduling her few genuinely important personal financial choices for mornings before her decision fatigue has accumulated instead of leaving them for the exhausted end of a long shift. This also means protecting her most depleted hours from financial exposure altogether, deleting shopping apps from her phone, unsubscribing from sale emails. Not because she lacks discipline, but because she finally understands that discipline is a depleting resource, and the smartest use of it is avoiding unnecessary tests of it late at night. Step 3 addresses the identity spending directly. Elena starts asking a specific question before certain purchases. What version of myself am I actually trying to feel like right now? And is there a cheaper, faster way to access that same feeling? Sometimes the honest answer is rest. Sometimes it's a phone call to a friend. Rarely is it actually the object itself. This step doesn't eliminate every purchase. It just makes the real motivation visible before the money leaves her account. Sometimes Elena still buys the item, fully aware of why. That awareness alone changes the pattern from unconscious repetition into a conscious, occasional choice. Step 4 is automating everything possible. Retirement contributions, savings transfers, and bill payments all get set up to happen automatically the moment income arrives, before Elena's tired brain ever gets a chance to weigh in. The best financial decisions are often the ones removed entirely from daily willpower. This might be the most important insight in Elena's entire journey. A system that runs automatically doesn't care how exhausted, emotional, or overconfident anyone feels on a given day. Automation succeeds precisely where intelligence alone kept failing, because it removes the moment of vulnerable decision-making altogether. Step 5 is external accountability, something outside Elena's own head that can catch what her internal reasoning might miss. A monthly check-in with a partner, a financial advisor, or even a simple shared spreadsheet with a friend. Smart people are excellent at fooling themselves. They're much worse at fooling someone reviewing the numbers from outside. This step specifically neutralizes the lawyer brain problem from earlier. It's difficult to construct a convincing internal justification when someone else is asking simple, direct questions about an actual receipt. External accountability doesn't require more intelligence. It simply removes the private courtroom where all the convincing arguments used to win uncontested. 6 months into these changes, Elena's spending pattern looks noticeably different. Not because she suddenly became a different person, and not because she stopped being exhausted after long shifts. The exhaustion never went away. What changed is that her financial decisions stopped depending on whether she had enough willpower left to make a good one. Here's the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath Elena's entire story. Intelligence was never going to be the solution because intelligence was never actually the problem. The problem was believing that being smart in one area meant automatically being protected in another, a belief nearly every high-achieving person quietly carries, right up until their bank account proves otherwise. Lena's pattern plays out across nearly every profession that rewards intelligence: engineers, lawyers, professors, executives. The specific mistakes look different from person to person. The underlying mechanism is remarkably consistent. 6 invisible forces, quietly overriding logic, dressed up afterward in perfectly rational sounding explanations. If any part of Elena's story feels familiar, shame is the wrong response to it. Shame actually makes decision fatigue worse, adding another layer of emotional exhaustion to a brain that's already running on limited resources. Understanding the mechanism is far more useful than feeling bad about having one. Financial well-being was never actually a subset of general intelligence. It's its own specific skill, built through deliberate structures and honest observation, the same way medical expertise requires years of specific practice rather than raw intelligence alone. Elena didn't become a doctor by being smart. She became one by training deliberately for years inside that specific domain. Money simply never got that same deliberate training for Elena or for most people. Nobody spends 4 years in structured, supervised financial residency the way doctors do in medicine. The gap wasn't intelligence, it was specific, deliberate practice applied to a completely different domain than the one that made her successful in the first place. This reframing changes everything about how Elena approaches money now. She no longer expects her intelligence to automatically protect her. She builds structures instead, the same way a smart doctor still double-checks a dosage, not because she doesn't know the math, but because she understands exactly how tired brains make mistakes. The broader lesson here extends past money entirely. Anywhere a smart, capable person keeps repeating a pattern that logic alone should have fixed by now, the same 6 forces are usually quietly at work: exhaustion, emotional reasoning, present bias, identity, decision fatigue, and overconfidence, dressed up in whatever domain the pattern happens to show up in. This is why some of the smartest people struggle with the same repeated patterns in relationships, health, and career decisions too, not just money. The mechanism explaining Elena's spending is the same mechanism explaining countless other decisions people make against their own better judgment every single day across every area of life. If any part of this felt familiar, the starting point isn't trying to think harder or feel more disciplined. It's building one small structural change this week: an automatic transfer, a locked waiting cart, one honest conversation with someone who can see the numbers clearly from outside. Elena still reads finance books for fun. She's still, by any measure, exceptionally smart. But her financial life no longer depends on that intelligence winning a fight against exhaustion at 10 o'clock at night. It depends on a handful of quiet structures that don't need her to be smart in that exact moment, just present enough to have built them in advance. Being smart was never the problem, and it was never going to be the solution either. The people who finally fix this pattern aren't the ones who outthink it. They're the ones who stop expecting intelligence to do a job it was never actually built for, and build something sturdier in its place.